So, wit and humor. The importance of being earnest is a comedy. And I want to ask now in this video, what's funny about it? Not all plays that are defined as comedies are funny. We'll talk about that in the future. But the importance of being earnest is funny. At least some people, including me, find it funny. I think there are two main sources of humor in the play: what the characters do, the plot, the actions, and what the characters say. I will concentrate now on what they say. Again, we can separate this out into two categories. Characters saying outrageous, ridiculous things on purpose in order to be funny, at least to make themselves laugh, or characters saying outrageous, ridiculous things without noticing it. It is not always easy to say which is which, but in general, it seems to me that Algernon, is the one who says ridiculous things on purpose in order to entertain himself and maybe some others. And the rest of the characters seem to be oblivious, to not really notice that what they are saying is outrageous and upside down. When the character knows that they are being funny, we can say that they are witty, that they are characterized as witty. If they don't seem to know that they are funny, we can say that the playwright is being witty. Oscar Wilde himself was well known to be a great wit in real life and not only in writing. He had the ability to deliver these short, succinct, funny one-liners at parties, at dinner parties, that made people invite him to more parties and made him a kind of celebrity among the upper class. Some of these one-liners, some of these witticisms ended up in his own writing as well, in plays like The Importance of Being Earnest and in his novel and short stories. So what is wit? Sometimes we say a wit as a person who is witty, but what is wit in general? Wit, in the way I'm using it, is clever, smart humor. That is smart, clever, and not vulgar, not something that belongs to, bodily function humor, lower vulgar humor, and it's usually verbal. That is something that's said, not physical, right? A person slipping on a banana or getting a pie in the face is not wit. It might be funny, it might be humor, but it's far from wit. Wilde's wit usually operates this way. You say things that on the first hearing them sound right, sounds correct, but if you dig a little deeper, they don't really make any sense. Or the opposite. You say things that sound totally bizarre, ridiculous at first. You say, no, that can't be true. But when you dig a little deeper and think a little more, or the character explains it a little more, you suddenly find yourself not being able to argue against it. So Jack, the character who's characterized as more serious, more earnest than the witty, superficial Algie, finds himself in this position many times, where Algie says something that sounds ridiculous and Jack wants to argue against, but he finds he has no way to argue against it because deep down it actually does make some sort of sense. And I will give a few examples. So all of these examples are from the first act. Here's the first example. So this is early in the first act. Algernon and Jack are still talking among themselves, and they are constantly eating, as you remember. Well, my dear fellow, you need not eat as if you were going to eat it all of the bread and butter that he prepared for Gwendolyn. You behave as if you were married to her, to Gwendolyn, already. So he's saying, acting as if you are married means you eat all her food. Being married means you eat all your partner's food. On the face of it, that doesn't sound right. What doesn't mean, being married doesn't mean you're eating each other's food and not leaving any food for your partner. This is the opposite of being romantic. But maybe Algernon hits on a truth about how husbands treat their wives. As if the wife's desires, in this case the desire for bread and butter, are not as important as the husband's own desire, again, for bread and butter or for anything else. So being a married man means ignoring your wife's needs. Maybe that's what he's suggesting. You are not married to her already, and I don't think you ever will be. Why on earth do you say that? Jack asks. Well, Algernon answers, well, in the first place, girls never marry the men they flirt with. This is so general, right? Never marry the girls they flirt with. Never marry the men they flirt with. This is so general. It sounds like it couldn't possibly be true. But perhaps it is true for some women, for some girls, who see love, or at least flirting, not love necessarily, but flirting in public as different from the serious matter of marriage, making this absurd observation that a girl will never marry the man who she likes to talk with romantically. He is suggesting that a lot of people view marriage and courting as two totally different things. Girls don't think it right. He's using this language of morality. What is right and wrong in order to discuss something that would seem the opposite, right? Like flirting with someone but never planning to marry him sounds wrong, sounds immoral, sounds deceiving. But in Alge's witty worldview, it's actually that flirting with somebody you mean to marry seems wrong to girls. Giving gentlemen the wrong impression by flirting with them, but not meaning ever to marry. Next example. Jack finishes to explain how he's Jack in the country and Ernest in town, as we'll see in the next video. We'll talk about it more. And he finishes his explanation. That, my dear Algie, is the whole truth, pure and simple. And Algie says, the truth is rarely pure and never simple. Modern life would be very tedious if it were either, and modern literature a complete impossibility. Algie takes the cliché expression of truth, pure and simple, and destabilizes it. Wit often attacks clichés, things that people say all the time, so they seem true, but they are also old and acned and boring. The truth is not pure. It is probably dirty and taints you. Nor is it simple. Real truth is complicated, complex. Right? With this simple witticism of truth is rarely pure and never simple, he says something quite deep about truth-telling. I think many can agree with that, with this idea that truth is not simple but complex. Then Algie doesn't trust at that and has another jab at the saying, at the cliché. It's lucky that truth isn't simple and rarely pure. If it was reality, truth was simple, then it would be very boring, tedious. Algie says, lucky us, it's dirty and complex. Literature, he adds, I think in a line that I could do without, it's not that good. would not be possible without this complexity of truth. Fiction would not be possible without truth being complicated. Algernon invites himself to dinner with Jack, as you see, and Jack says, I haven't asked you to dine with me. I haven't asked you to have dinner with me anywhere tonight. And Algernon says, I know, you are absolutely careless about sending out invitation. It is very foolish of you. Nothing annoys people so much as not receiving invitations. Here the humor or wit comes from Algie turning the tables on Jack. Jack says, you're not invited to dinner. Algie, in fact, is being quite rude by inviting himself to dinner. As Algie is being rude, he accuses Jack of being rude by neglecting to invite him. Instead of Jack being annoyed at Algie for inviting himself and sponging off of him, Algie suggests that he is annoyed because Jack lacks the good manners of inviting him. Why do I need to remind you to invite me? In fact, according to Algernon, all of his friends would be annoyed at Jack. Nothing annoys people so much as not receiving invitations. Okay, listen. Explaining wit is very tiring work. It's explaining jokes. So it is time to move to the next subject.